How did my own daughter smile while her new boyfriend humiliated me at our first meeting? Why did she think my money was automatic, even after that? Can you blame me for choosing the only language they respected, boundaries, paperwork, and consequences? My name is Gideon Hale. I'm 58 years old, and I've spent the last 32 years working at the municipal water facility as a maintenance supervisor. It's not glamorous work. Most people don't think about water pressure or filtration systems or emergency shutoff protocols until something goes wrong. But when everything works the way it should, when a city of 200,000 people turn on their faucets and clean water flows without interruption, that's me and my team. That's what I do. I raised my daughter Talia mostly alone. Her mother left when Talia was 4, just walked out one Sunday morning with 2 suitcases and a forwarding address 3 states away. No fight, no warning, just gone. So it was me and Talia in a rented duplex with brown carpet and a kitchen window that faced a parking lot. I worked doubles when I could, picked up holiday shifts, learned to braid hair from YouTube videos, and showed up to every school event that mattered. I wasn't perfect, but I was there. Talia's 26 now. She works in marketing at a mid-size firm downtown, the kind of place with exposed brick and standing desks, and a coffee bar that serves oat milk. She's good at her job. Sharp, creative. She knows how to read a room and adjust her pitch on the fly. I'm proud of her. I've always been proud of her. But somewhere along the way, pride got complicated. It started small. A glance she'd give me when I showed up to meet her for lunch in my work boots and canvas jacket. A laugh she'd stifle when I didn't know the name of some restaurant or app everyone else seemed to use. Little moments where I could feel her measuring me against some invisible standard I didn't understand. I told myself it was normal. She was growing up, building her own life, finding her own people. I didn't realize how far it had gone until I met Blaze. The support card was my idea. I set it up when Talia was in college, a supplemental spending card linked to my credit union account. It was supposed to be for emergencies, groceries when she was low on cash, a car repair, books, gas. The agreement was simple. She'd use it responsibly, and I'd trust her judgment. No lectures, no micromanaging. For a few years it worked. The charges were reasonable, predictable. Then she graduated, got the marketing job, and the charges changed. Not all at once, just gradually. Coffee became coffee and pastries. Groceries became groceries and wine. A gas fill-up became a gas fill-up, and a car wash and air freshener. Still manageable. Still within the boundaries of what I'd call help. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. But over the last 6 months, the pattern shifted again. The charges got bigger, more frequent, less essential, dinners at places I couldn't pronounce, skincare products with price tags that made my stomach tighten, clothes, accessories, things that weren't needs but performances of a life I didn't recognize. I didn't say anything. I told myself it was temporary. A phase. She was young. She was finding herself. What kind of father pulls support because his daughter wants nice things? But deep down, I knew something had changed. I was standing in the water facility control room when Talia texted me about meeting Blaze for the first time. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was running a diagnostic on one of the secondary filtration pumps. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I wiped my hands on my pants before pulling it out. "Dad, I want you to meet someone. Coffee tomorrow? Say 2 p.m. at Ember and Grain downtown?" Ember and Grain. I didn't know the place, but I could guess. Reclaimed wood, Edison bulbs, artisan this and locally sourced that. The kind of spot where a regular coffee costs $6, I typed back. "Sounds good. See you then." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of bills and a calculator, the same way I'd done for decades. The numbers always balanced, barely, but they balanced. I looked at the credit union app on my phone and scrolled through Talia's recent transactions. $200 at a boutique, $150 at a salon. $87 at a place called Glow Organics. I closed the app and set the phone down. Tomorrow, I'd meet the boyfriend. Tomorrow, I'd be supportive. I'd smile and ask questions and pretend I didn't notice the way my daughter's world was pulling further and further away from mine. The next day, I clocked out at 1:30 and drove downtown. I found parking 3 blocks away and walked to Ember and Grain in my cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt I'd ironed that morning. The place was exactly what I expected. Polished concrete floors, plants in geometric pots, a chalkboard menu with drink names I didn't understand. Talia was already there, sitting at a corner table near the window. And next to her was Blaze. He stood when I approached, extending his hand with a smile that showed too many teeth. "Gideon, great to finally meet you. Talia talks about you all the time." He was tall, polished, the kind of guy who looked like he spent an hour in front of a mirror every morning and made it seem effortless. Crisp white shirt, expensive watch, hair styled in a way that probably had a name I didn't know. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, performative. He held it a second too long, making sure I noticed. "Nice to meet you," I said. We sat. Talia smiled at me, bright and nervous. "Dad, Blaze is a sales consultant. He works with high-performance teams, leadership training, optimization strategies." Blaze leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the back of Talia's seat. "It's all about maximizing potential, helping people see what's holding them back. Most folks don't realize they're stuck in patterns that keep them small." I nodded. "Sounds interesting." "It's necessary," he said. "The world's moving fast. You adapt, or you get left behind." He said it casually, like he was talking about the weather, but there was a weight to it, a message underneath the words. Talia jumped in. "Dad's been at the water facility for what, 30 years? 32, I said. Blay raised his eyebrows. "Wow, that's committed. Same job for 3 decades. That's rare these days." "Someone's got to keep the water running," I said. He smiled. "True. I guess we all need plumbers." The word hung in the air. Plumbers, not maintenance supervisor, not water systems technician. Plumber. The implication was clear. Manual labor, blue collar, small. Talia laughed, a quick, nervous sound that she tried to cover by sipping her latte. I didn't correct him. I just watched. Blaze continued, his tone friendly but sharp. "I mean, there's dignity in that kind of work, right? Stable, predictable, no risk. Clock in, clock out, paycheck every 2 weeks. It's a safe life." "It's an honest life," I said quietly. "Oh, absolutely, honest." He nodded like he was agreeing, but his smile said otherwise. "But man, I could never do it. I need challenge, growth. I need to know I'm building something, not just maintaining." I glanced at Talia. She was looking down at her cup, tracing the rim with her finger. She didn't defend me. She didn't redirect the conversation. She just sat there, letting it happen. The barista called out a name, and Blaze excused himself to grab a pastry he'd ordered. As soon as he was out of earshot, I leaned forward slightly. "Talia," I said softly, "is he always like this?" She looked up, startled. "Like what?" "Like..." I searched for the right word. "Performing." Her face tightened. "Dad, he's confident. That's not a bad thing." "I didn't say it was." She glanced over at Blaze, who was chatting with the barista, laughing at something she said. "He's really good at what he does. He's ambitious. He's going places." "I'm sure he is." She turned back to me, her expression defensive now. "You don't like him." "I just met him." "But you don't like him." I looked at her for a long moment. "I like you. That's what matters." Blaze returned with a chocolate croissant on a small plate. He broke off a piece and offered it to Talia, who smiled and took it. He didn't offer me any. For the next 40 minutes, I sat and listened while Blaze talked. About his work, his strategies, his successes. He name-dropped clients and companies and threw around terms like synergy and disruption and vertical integration. Talia nodded along, asking questions at the right moments, laughing at his jokes. I stayed quiet. I observed. At one point, Blaze looked at me directly and said, "So Gideon, what's your 5-year plan? Still planning to be at the water plant, or are you thinking about leveling up? Maybe consulting? Freelancing?" I met his eyes. "I'm thinking about keeping 200,000 people hydrated and safe." He grinned. "Fair enough. Someone's got to do it." The waitress walked by our table, clearing empty cups from a nearby seat. I saw her glance at Blaze, then at me. She'd heard the whole exchange. I could see it in her face. The secondhand embarrassment, the pity. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just clarity. This wasn't a conversation. It was a test. And Talia was grading me. When the meeting finally ended, Blaze shook my hand again, that same performative grip. "Good to meet you, man. We should do this again." "Sure," I said. Talia hugged me, quick and distracted. "Thanks for coming, Dad. I'll call you soon." I walked back to my truck, the sound of their laughter fading behind me. I got in, started the engine, and sat there for a moment staring at the steering wheel. Then my phone buzzed. A bank alert. Talia's card. $234. Purchase made 3 minutes ago. Location: Ember and Grain. I looked at the notification. Then I looked back at the cafe window. Through the glass, I could see them still sitting there, Blay gesturing with his hands, Talia leaning in close. I put the truck in gear and drove home. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. The insults disguised as compliments. The way Blay had positioned himself as the authority in the room. The way Talia had let him. And that smile. She'd smiled while he humiliated me. Not because she was cruel, but because she wanted his approval more than she wanted my dignity. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at the credit union account page. The charges were all there, a timeline of decisions. I didn't make any changes, not yet, but I marked the moment in my mind, like evidence. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept seeing Talia's smile, the way she'd laughed when Blay called me a plumber. It wasn't a mean laugh, it wasn't malicious, but it was complicit. She'd chosen him in that moment, and I knew it. By 3 a.m, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold, staring at nothing. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the building settling. I've lived in the same place for 23 years. Same brown carpet, same rattling bathroom fan, same view of the parking lot where the streetlight flickers every 12 seconds. Talia grew up here. I used to carry her on my shoulders down that hallway, bouncing her until she giggled so hard she couldn't breathe. I taught her to ride a bike in that parking lot, holding the back of her seat and running alongside her until she found her balance. When she was 8, she made me a Father's Day card out of construction paper and glitter, and it's still taped to the side of my fridge, faded and curling at the edges. I raised her alone. Her mother left on a Sunday. I remember because I was cooking pancakes, and Talia was in the living room watching cartoons. I heard the front door open and close, and when I looked up, she was gone. Just like that. No argument, no explanation. I found a note on the dresser 2 hours later. Short, emotionless. I need something different. Don't look for me. I didn't. I focused on Talia. I switched to the day shift so I could be home when she got off the school bus. I learned to cook more than 3 meals. I went to parent-teacher conferences and dance recitals and science fairs. I stayed awake with her when she had nightmares, held her when she cried about kids at school who were mean, helped her with homework even when I didn't understand the math. I sacrificed things, friendships, hobbies, the idea of dating someone new. I didn't resent it. I chose it. She was my priority, always. When she got accepted to college, I was so proud I cried in my truck on the way home from her graduation ceremony. I pulled over in a gas station parking lot and just sat there, tears running down my face because I'd done it. I'd gotten her there, alone, without help. The support card was my idea. I set it up her freshman year because I didn't want her to stress about money the way I had. I didn't want her eating ramen every night or skipping meals to pay for textbooks. I wanted her to focus on school, on building a future. The rules were simple. Use it for essentials. Don't abuse it. Trust me, and I'll trust you. For years, it worked. She was responsible, thoughtful. She'd text me before making a big purchase asking if it was okay. She'd say thank you. She understood that my paycheck wasn't infinite, that every dollar mattered. But somewhere along the way, the thank you stopped, the questions stopped, the charges just appeared, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem controlling. I didn't want to be the dad who nickel and dimed his daughter. I convinced myself it was fine. She was building a career. She needed to look professional. She needed to network. If a nice outfit or a dinner out helped her feel confident, then it was worth it. But deep down, I knew the truth. The card had stopped being a safety net. It had become an expectation, and I'd let it happen. I closed my laptop and rubbed my face. The sun was starting to rise, pale light creeping through the kitchen window. I had to be at work in 3 hours, and I hadn't slept at all. I thought about Blay again, the way he'd leaned back in his chair like he owned the room, the way he'd tested me, over and over, with that smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'd seen guys like him before. Men who mistake cruelty for confidence, who need an audience to feel powerful. But what bothered me more than Blaze was Talia. She wasn't naive. She wasn't stupid. She'd seen what he was doing. She'd heard the insults, and she'd smiled anyway. Because in that moment, his approval mattered more than mine. That's what hurt. Not the words, not the humiliation. The fact that she'd chosen to participate. I got to work at 6:30, clocked in, and went straight to the control room. It's a small space with monitors and gauges and a whiteboard covered in maintenance schedules. I like it there. It's quiet, methodical. Everything has a purpose. My coworker Lamar was already there, sipping coffee from a thermos. He nodded when I walked in. "You look like garbage," he said. "Didn't sleep." "Yeah, I can tell." He studied me for a second, then went back to his checklist. "You okay?" "Yeah." He didn't push. That's one of the things I like about Lamar. He respects silence. We worked through the morning without much conversation. I ran diagnostics on the filtration system, checked pressure levels, logged everything in the maintenance binder. The work was familiar, comforting. It required focus, and focus kept my mind from circling back to the cafe. But around noon, my phone buzzed again. Another charge, Talia's card, $73. Location, a boutique downtown. I stared at the notification for a long moment, then put the phone back in my pocket. Lamar glanced over. "Everything good?" "Yeah." He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. After my shift, I didn't go straight home. I needed to walk, to clear my head. I drove to the public park on the east side of town, the one with the paved trails and the pond where people feed the ducks. I parked and walked the loop. It was late afternoon, and the park was mostly empty. A few joggers, a woman with a stroller, an old man on a bench with a newspaper. I kept thinking about the first time I brought Talia here. She was maybe 6 years old, and she'd wanted to feed the ducks so badly that she'd cried when I told her we didn't have any bread. So I'd driven to the gas station, bought a loaf of the cheapest white bread they had, and driven back. We stood at the edge of the pond, and she threw piece after piece into the water, laughing every time a duck came close. She'd looked up at me with so much joy in her eyes. "Daddy, this is the best day ever." I'd believed her. Now, I wondered if she even remembered that day, if it mattered to her the way it mattered to me. I sat down on a bench near the trail and watched the water. A group of ducks floated lazily near the shore, dipping their heads under and paddling in slow circles. My phone buzzed. A text from Talia. "Hey, Dad, thanks again for meeting Blaze yesterday. He really liked you." I read it twice. Then I put the phone away without responding. That evening, I ended up at Nina's bar. I didn't plan to go there. I just found myself driving in that direction, and before I knew it, I was pulling into the parking lot. Nina Velez had been Talia's friend since high school. They'd stayed close over the years, even when Talia moved downtown and started spending time in circles that didn't include people like Nina. Nina was a bartender at a place called the Copper Post, a no-frills dive with good wings and cheap beer. She was practical, honest, the kind of person who said what she meant and didn't apologize for it. I walked in and took a seat at the bar. Nina was wiping down the counter, and when she looked up, her expression shifted. "Gideon, hey, wasn't expecting to see you tonight. Just needed to get out of the house." She studied me for a second, then grabbed a glass and filled it with water. "You want something stronger, or are you driving?" "Driving." She set the water in front of me. "You look like something's on your mind." I didn't answer right away. I just sipped the water and watched the TV mounted in the corner. Sports highlights, scores scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Nina leaned against the bar, her arms crossed. "Talia mentioned she introduced you to Blaze." I looked at her. She did. Nina's jaw tightened just slightly. "And? And what? And what did you think?" I turned the glass in my hands. "Doesn't matter what I think." "Yeah, it does." I looked up. Nina was watching me with that sharp, no-nonsense expression she got when she was cutting through nonsense. "She's happy," I said quietly. "That's what matters." Nina shook her head. "No, she's performing. There's a difference." I didn't respond. She sighed and grabbed a rag, wiping down the already clean bar. "I've known Talia a long time, Gideon, and I've seen her date guys who were bad for her. But Blaze? He's different. He's not just bad for her. He's changing her." "How?" "She talks different now, acts different. She used to call me when she was stressed or confused. Now she calls me to brag. About dinners, about trips, about how Blaze knows all the right people." Nina paused. "And she doesn't ask about me anymore. She just talks." I looked down at my hands. "Maybe that's just growing up." "Growing up doesn't mean forgetting where you came from," Nina said quietly. "And it doesn't mean treating the people who love you like props." She let the words hang there for a moment, then moved down the bar to help another customer. I sat there for another 20 minutes, nursing my water, thinking about what she'd said. Performing. That's exactly what it was. When I finally left, Nina walked me to the door. She put a hand on my arm, just for a second. "Be careful, Gideon," she said. "Guys like Blaze don't just hurt the people they date. They hurt everyone around them." I nodded. "I know. Do you?" I didn't answer. I just walked to my truck and drove home. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again, staring at my phone. The group chat notification was still there, unread. I opened it. Talia had posted a photo. Her and Blay at some restaurant I didn't recognize. Dim lighting, cocktails, smiling faces. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings with my favorite person." Below it, someone had commented, "Power couple." Talia had hearted the comment. I closed the app and set the phone down. Then another alert came through. Another charge. Non-essential, a ride share. $53, and beneath it, a second charge, a late-night meal delivery. $41. I stared at the numbers. Not because they were catastrophic, but because they were timed, calculated, like a test, like she was daring me to say something. I didn't react, not outwardly, but inside I filed it away. Evidence. The rooftop bar was called the Meridian, and I hated it the moment I walked in. Glass walls, exposed steel beams, furniture that looked uncomfortable on purpose. The kind of place where the drinks cost $20 and came with garnishes that belonged in a garden. Talia had texted me 3 days after the coffee shop meeting, asking me to come to a small celebration. She didn't say what they were celebrating. She didn't ask if I was free. She just sent the address and the time, along with a line that felt more like a warning than an invitation. Blaze really wants you there. It would mean a lot. Translation: don't embarrass me. I showed up because I'm her father, and that's what fathers do. But I knew the moment I walked in that I didn't belong. The place was packed with people in their 20s and 30s, all dressed like they'd walked out of a commercial for luxury watches or premium vodka. The men wore fitted shirts and expensive shoes. The women wore dresses that showed just enough to suggest confidence. Everyone looked polished, curated, like they'd rehearsed their smiles in a mirror. I was wearing khakis and a collared shirt, clean but plain, functional. I felt like a janitor at a gala. Talia spotted me from across the room and waved. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled in waves that framed her face. She looked beautiful. She also looked like someone I didn't know. Blay was next to her, one hand resting on the small of her back. He saw me and smiled, that same sharp smile from the coffee shop. "Gideon, you made it." He extended his hand and I shook it. "Glad you could come. This is a big night." "What are we celebrating?" I asked. "Momentum," Blaze said, like that explained everything. "Growth. Connection. You know, the things that matter." I nodded, even though I had no idea what he was talking about. Talia looped her arm through Blaze's and smiled at me. "Thanks for coming, Dad. It means a lot to us." Us. The word stung more than it should have. "Of course," I said. Blaze gestured toward the bar. "Get yourself a drink. Relax. We'll catch up in a bit." And just like that, I was dismissed. I didn't get a drink. I found a corner near the railing and stood there watching. The city skyline stretched out behind me, lights glittering in the dark. It was a nice view, the kind of view you're supposed to appreciate. But I couldn't focus on it. I watched Blaze work the room. He moved from group to group, shaking hands, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear, always touching someone's shoulder or arm in that way that suggested familiarity. Talia stayed close to him, mirroring his energy, laughing when he laughed, nodding when he made points. She was performing again. About 30 minutes in, Blaze made his way back to me, this time with a drink in his hand. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the city like he owned it. "Nice view, huh?" he said. "Yeah." He took a sip of his drink, something dark in a short glass. "You know, Gideon, I've been thinking about our conversation the other day, about your work, your career." I didn't respond. I just waited. "I've got a lot of respect for guys like you," he continued. "Guys who put in the time, who do the grunt work. You're the foundation, you know, the backbone. Without guys like you, guys like me wouldn't have the freedom to build." He said it like he was complimenting me, but these words hurt. "Glad I could help," I said quietly. He smiled. "That's the thing, though. You could help more." I turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" He swirled his drink, watching the ice shift. "Talia's got potential, real potential, but she's held back by old thinking, old patterns. She's too focused on security, on playing it safe. She needs to take risks, invest in herself." "She has a good job," I said. "Good isn't great," Blaze said, "and great is what separates people who matter from people who don't." I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice level. "What does this have to do with me?" Blaze turned to face me fully now, his expression serious. "You're her father. She looks to you for guidance, for approval. If you keep reinforcing this small mindset, she's never going to break out of it." "Small mindset," I repeated. "Yeah, you know, clock in, clock out, paycheck to paycheck. Safe." He said the word like it was poison. "Talia deserves more than that, and honestly, so do you." I looked at him for a long moment. "I think Talia's doing just fine." He smiled again, but this time there was an edge to it. "You think that. But do you know that?" Before I could respond, Someone called his name from across the room. He raised his glass in acknowledgement, then looked back at me. "Think about it," he said. Then he walked away. I stood there, gripping the railing, staring at the skyline without seeing it. He was testing me again, pushing, seeing how far he could go before I reacted, and I still wasn't reacting. The night dragged on. I stayed in my corner, watching people laugh and drink and take photos. At one point, Talia came over, her face flushed from the heat and the alcohol. "Dad, you okay? You've been standing here forever." "I'm fine," I said. She studied me, and for a second, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Concern, maybe, or guilt. But then Blay called her name, and the moment passed. "I should get back," she said, "but thanks for being here, really." "Talia," I said before she could walk away. She turned. "Are you happy?" I asked. She blinked, surprised. "What? Are you happy? With all this? With him?" Her expression shifted, and I saw the defensiveness creep back in. "Yes, Dad. I'm happy. Why wouldn't I be?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her. She shook her head, frustration flickering across her face. "You don't get it. You've never gotten it. This is my life, my choices. You can't just—" She stopped herself, took a breath. "I'm happy, okay?" "Okay," I said quietly. She walked away, and I watched her rejoin Blaze, slipping back into the role she'd been playing all night. Around 11, the crowd started to thin. I was about to leave when Blaze appeared again, this time with Talia at his side. "Gideon," he said, his voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Before you go, I wanted to say something." I waited. He put his arm around Talia's shoulders and smiled at me. "I want you to know I'm serious about your daughter. I'm invested. I'm committed. And I'm going to make sure she has everything she deserves." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But that takes support," he continued. "Real support. Not just words, not just showing up. I mean tangible support. The kind that says, 'I believe in you. I'm behind you. I'll do whatever it takes.'" He was looking at me when he said it. I felt the eyes of the people around us. I saw the phones, the casual recording of a moment that looked like sentiment but felt like extortion. Talia was smiling, not nervous this time, expectant. "I've always supported Talia," I said evenly. "I know you have," Blaze said, "and I respect that. But there's a difference between supporting who she was and supporting who she's becoming." He let that hang in the air. Then he extended his hand again, like we were sealing a deal. "I'm glad we're on the same page." I didn't shake his hand, not right away. I just looked at him, at his confident smile, at the way he was using Talia as a prop. Then I shook it, because I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. But inside, I made a decision. I walked to my truck in silence. The night air was cool, and the city lights stretched out in every direction. I got in, closed the door, and sat there for a moment. Then I pulled out my phone and made a call. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. "Gideon, it's late. Everything okay?" Calvin Reese, my best friend since high school, a retired bank compliance officer who knew more about financial systems than anyone I'd ever met. "I need your help," I said. There was a pause. Then Calvin said, "What happened?" "I need to set a boundary," I said. "The right way. Legally, cleanly." Another pause. "Okay. Let's talk." I told him everything. The coffee shop, the charges, the rooftop bar, Blaze's implications, Talia's smile. Calvin listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're not overreacting." "I know. And you're sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure." Calvin exhaled. "All right, here's what we do." He walked me through the steps, how to document the pattern, how to set limits, how to protect myself legally while making the boundary clear. This isn't about punishment, Calvin said. It's about control. Right now, they think they have it. You're going to take it back. Without drama, I said. Without drama, Calvin confirmed. Just procedure, just rules. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in the truck for another 10 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. I thought about the way Blaze had looked at me, the way he'd talked about Talia like she was a product to be developed, the way she'd stood there and let him, and I thought about the spending card, the charges, the timeline. I started the engine and drove home. By the time I got there, I'd already made up my mind. The credit union was a small brick building on the south side of town, tucked between a bakery and a dry cleaner. I'd been banking there for 26 years, and I knew most of the staff by name. Orrin Pike, the branch manager, had helped me set up my first savings account when Talia was a baby. He was a careful, methodical man who believed in paperwork and procedure, and I trusted him. I walked in just after 9 in the morning, still wearing my work uniform. Orrin was at his desk in the back, visible through the glass partition. He looked up when I approached and waved me in. "Gideon, good to see you. What brings you in?" I sat down across from him and folded my hands on the desk. "I need to talk about the supplemental card I set up for my daughter." Orrin nodded. "The authorized user account. What's going on?" "I need to change the terms," I said, "or remove it entirely." He leaned back in his chair, his expression neutral. "Okay, can you tell me why?" I'd rehearsed this conversation in my head a dozen times, but sitting there, saying it out loud, felt different. I kept my voice steady. The card was set up as a safety net, emergencies, essentials, but it's being used for non-essential purchases now, lifestyle spending, and the person using it doesn't respect the boundary I tried to set. Orrin nodded slowly. "And you've talked to her about this?" "I've tried," I said, "but talking isn't working. I need something more concrete." "Understood." He pulled up my account on his computer, scanning the details. "So, a few options. We can set a monthly spending limit. We can restrict the categories of purchases. Or we can deactivate the card entirely and issue a new one with stricter terms. What would you recommend?" Orrin looked at me, his expression thoughtful. "That depends on your goal. If you want to teach responsibility, limits and categories can work. If you want to cut off access entirely, deactivation is the cleanest option. But either way, you need to document it, in writing, so there's no ambiguity later." "I want clean," I said. "No ambiguity, no room for negotiation." He nodded. "Then deactivation. I'll issue a letter confirming the change, and you'll have a paper trail. It's your account, your money. You have every right to set these terms." I felt a weight lift off my chest. "How long does it take?" "I can process it today. The card will stop working by tonight. You'll get a confirmation email." "Do it," I said. Orrin typed for a few minutes, clicking through screens, entering codes. Then he printed out a form and slid it across the desk. "Sign here," he said. I signed. He handed me a copy. "You're doing the right thing, Gideon. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary." I thanked him and left. As I walked back to my truck, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I'd finally done something. Dread because I knew what was coming next. The card would stop working. Talia would try to use it, and then she'd call me. I wasn't sure I was ready for that conversation, but it was too late to turn back now. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went to work, ran through my usual routines, and tried not to think about the clock ticking down. By late afternoon, I'd checked my phone a dozen times, waiting for the notification. It came at 6:14, a call from Talia. I stared at the screen for a moment, then answered. "Dad?" Her voice was tight, confused. "My card isn't working." "I know," I said. There was a pause. "What do you mean, you know?" "I deactivated it." Silence. Then, "You what?" "I deactivated the card," I said calmly. I went to the credit union this morning and removed your access. You can't do that. I can. I did. Her voice rose. Dad, what the heck? I'm at the store. I have groceries. I need this card. Use your own card, I said. I don't have enough on my card right now. That's why I was using yours. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence stretch. Dad, seriously, this isn't funny. Turn it back on. No. Another pause. Longer this time. Why are you doing this? Because it was meant for emergencies, I said, and it's being used for everything else. That's not true. Talia, I have the transaction history. I know exactly what it's being used for. Her voice turned defensive. So what? You're punishing me for spending money? I'm setting a boundary, I said. The card was help, not a right, and help requires respect. Respect? She laughed, but it was sharp, bitter. This is about Blaze, isn't it? I didn't answer. Oh my gosh, Dad, you're jealous. You're punishing me because you don't like my boyfriend. This has nothing to do with jealousy, I said quietly. It has to do with the way I was treated. Treated? What are you talking about? At the coffee shop, at the bar. You let him humiliate me, Talia. You smiled while he did it. She went quiet. You didn't defend me, I continued. You didn't redirect him. You just sat there and let it happen because you wanted his approval more than my dignity. That's not... She stopped. Dad, you're overreacting. I'm not. Yes, you are. Blaze was just being himself. He's confident. He's ambitious. That's not an attack on you. He called me a plumber, I said. He talked about my life like it was small, and you laughed. I didn't laugh. You did. She made a frustrated sound. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Maybe, I said. But the card stays off. Dad, Talia, I love you, I always will, but I'm not going to pay to be disrespected. If you need help, real help, I'm here. But the free ride is over. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You're going to regret this. And she hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, my heart pounding. It was done. Over the next few days, I didn't hear from Talia. No calls, no texts. Just silence. I went to work. I came home. I cooked simple meals and ate them alone at the kitchen table. I tried not to think about her, but she was everywhere. In the photos on the fridge, in the drawings she'd made as a kid that I'd framed and hung on the walls, in the quiet. Calvin checked in once, asking how I was holding up. I'm fine, I said. You sure? No, but I did the right thing. You did, Calvin said. And she'll figure that out eventually. I wasn't so sure. On the fourth day, I ran into Nina at the grocery store. She was picking up coffee in the same aisle where I was grabbing bread, and she spotted me before I could avoid her. Gideon? She said, her expression careful. Hey. Nina. She hesitated, then said, I heard what happened. With the card. I didn't ask how she knew. Small circles, word travels. Yeah, I said. For what it's worth, she said quietly. I think you did the right thing. I looked at her. You do? She nodded. Talia needed a wake-up call. She's not a bad person, Gideon, but she's lost right now, and Blaze is making it worse. She hates me, I said. She doesn't hate you. She's mad. But mad isn't hate. I wanted to believe her, but I wasn't sure I did. There's something else you should know, Nina said. She glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Blaze has been bragging. About what? About how he's managing you. About how he's teaching Talia to stop letting you control her. Nina's face darkened. He's treating it like a game. I felt my chest tighten. And Talia? Nina sighed. She's listening to him. For now. I thanked her and left, my mind spinning. Blaze was escalating, turning this into a battle, and Talia was letting him, but I wasn't going to fight him on his terms. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote out a timeline. Every humiliation, every charge, every moment where respect was demanded and denied. I kept it simple, factual, undeniable. Then I made another call. Sloane Mercer. A crisp voice answered. Ms. Mercer, my name is Gideon Hale. Calvin Reese referred me. There was a pause. What can I do for you, Mr. Hale? I need advice, I said, about boundaries and documentation. All right, she said. Let's schedule a time to talk. We set a meeting for the following week. I hung up and looked at the timeline I'd written. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making sure they couldn't rewrite the story. A few days later, I got a notification. A calendar reminder. Community fundraiser. Saturday night. Banquet hall downtown. Talia had invited me weeks ago, back when things were still civil. I'd RSVP'd yes without thinking much about it. Now, I circled the date in my mind. This was it. The stage where Blay performed, where Talia wanted to shine, and where I would draw the line. I spent the week preparing, not with anger, not with revenge fantasies, just with clarity. I reviewed the timeline I'd written, I made copies, I kept everything simple, factual, undeniable. Dates, amounts, locations, witnesses. I didn't plan to humiliate Talia. I didn't plan to destroy Blaze. I just planned to make the truth impossible to ignore. Calvin met me for coffee 2 days before the fundraiser. We sat in a quiet corner of a diner on the edge of town, away from anyone who might know us. You ready for this? He asked. I don't know, I said honestly. You don't have to do anything public, Calvin said. You can just show up, be civil, and leave. No one says you have to make a scene. I'm not making a scene, I said. I'm just not letting them make me invisible. Calvin studied me. What's your goal here, Gideon? Really? I thought about it. I want them to understand that respect isn't optional, that I'm not a prop, that my help isn't owed. And if Talia doesn't get it, then at least I'll know I tried. Calvin nodded slowly. All right. Just remember, you control the narrative as long as you stay calm. The second you lose control, you lose the room. I know. Do you? He leaned forward. Because guys like Blaze thrive on making people look unstable. If you give him that, he wins. I won't, I said. Calvin sat back, satisfied. Good. The night before the fundraiser, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation in my head. The cafe, the rooftop bar, the phone call where Talia had accused me of overreacting. I thought about the way she used to look at me when she was little, like I was the smartest, strongest, safest person in the world. I thought about the way she looked at me now, like I was an obstacle. Part of me wanted to cancel, to stay home, to avoid the confrontation entirely. But I knew that if I did, nothing would change. Blaze would keep pushing, Talia would keep performing, and I'd keep shrinking. So I got up, got dressed, and drove downtown. The banquet hall was already crowded when I arrived. The event was a fundraiser for a local nonprofit that provided after-school programs for kids in low-income neighborhoods. It was the kind of event where people came to be seen as much as to give. Tickets were $100 each, and the room was full of donors, community leaders, and people who wanted to network. I recognized a few faces from around town. Colleagues, neighbors, people I'd worked with over the years. Talia was near the front of the room, standing next to Blaze. She was wearing a navy dress and heels, her hair swept up, her makeup flawless. Blaze was in a suit, his hand resting on her lower back in that possessive way he always did. They looked perfect, like a couple from a magazine. I stayed near the back, observing. Blay worked the room the way he always did, shaking hands, laughing at the right moments, making everyone around him feel like they were part of something important. Talia stayed close, smiling, nodding, playing the role of the supportive partner. At one point, someone I didn't recognize approached them, and Blaze gestured toward Talia as he spoke. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I saw the man nod, impressed. Talia glowed under the attention. The speeches started around 7. The nonprofit director spoke first, thanking the donors and outlining the programs they were funding. Then, a few volunteers shared stories about the kids they worked with. It was all very polished, very rehearsed. Then Blaze stepped up to the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "I just want to take a moment to talk about what it means to invest in the future." The room quieted. People leaned in. "Investment isn't just about money," Blaze continued. "It's about belief. It's about saying, I see your potential, and I'm willing to support you in reaching it." He paused, letting the words sink in. "That's what tonight is about, and that's what my relationship with Talia is about." He gestured toward her, and the room turned to look. Talia smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Talia is brilliant," Blaze said. "Driven, ambitious, but she's also surrounded by people who don't always see that. People who want her to play small, to stay safe, to settle." I felt my chest tighten. "But I believe in her," Blaze continued. "And I'm committed to making sure she has everything she needs to succeed, even when that means challenging the old ways, the outdated thinking." He looked out at the crowd, his expression sincere. "Because that's what real support looks like. Not just saying you care, but proving it." The room applauded. I stood there, frozen, as Blaze stepped away from the microphone and returned to Talia's side. She leaned into him, smiling, and he kissed the top of her head. I saw Nina across the room. She was watching me, her expression unreadable. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Calvin. "You still there?" I typed back. "Yeah." "You okay?" I didn't answer. An hour later, the formal speeches ended, and the room shifted into mingling mode. I stayed near the back, nursing a glass of water, watching. Blaze was holding court near the bar, surrounded by people who hung on his every word. Talia was next to him, laughing at something someone said. Then she excused herself and walked toward the restroom. I waited until she was out of sight, then I approached Blaze. He saw me coming and smiled. "Gideon, glad you made it." "We need to talk," I said quietly. His smile didn't falter. "Sure. What's up?" I gestured toward a quieter corner of the room, away from the crowd. He followed, his expression curious. When we were alone, I turned to face him. "I know what you're doing," I said. "What am I doing?" "You're using Talia. You're treating her like a project, like a prop." Blaze raised an eyebrow. "That's a strong accusation." "It's the truth." He studied me for a moment, then shrugged. "You see what you want to see, Gideon. But the reality is, Talia's happier now than she's ever been. And that's because I push her to be better." "You push her to be what you want," I said. "Maybe," Blaze said. "But at least I'm pushing her forward. What are you doing, holding her back with guilt and control?" "I'm not controlling her." "You cut off her card," Blaze said, his voice low. "That's control. That's a boundary." He smiled. "Call it whatever you want, but she's starting to see you for what you are, and trust me, that's not a good look." I didn't respond. I just looked at him. He leaned in slightly. "Here's the thing, Gideon. You're fighting a battle you've already lost. Talia doesn't need you anymore. She has me, and I can give her things you never could." "Like what?" I asked quietly. "Confidence, ambition, a future that isn't small." I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice steady. "You don't love her." Blaze laughed. "Love? Love is a fairy tale people tell themselves to feel better about settling. I respect Talia. I push her. I make her better. That's worth more than love." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said, "You're wrong." And I walked away. I found Talia near the entrance, checking her phone. She looked up when I approached, her expression wary. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I was invited," I said. She glanced around like she was worried someone might be watching. "Look, this isn't a good time." "I know," I said, "but I need you to hear something." She sighed. "Dad, I really don't want to do this right now." "I'm not asking for a fight," I said. "I'm asking for 2 minutes." She hesitated, then crossed her arms. "Fine, 2 minutes." I took a breath. "I love you, Talia. I always have. I always will. But I'm not going to keep funding a life where I'm treated like I don't matter." Her face hardened. "You're still on this?" "I'm on this because it's true," I said. "You let Blaze humiliate me. You smiled while he did it. And then you acted like I was the problem for setting a boundary." "Dad, I'm not done," I said quietly. "You're my daughter. I raised you. I sacrificed for you. And I would do it all again. But I will not pay to be disrespected. Not by him. Not by you." She looked away, her jaw tight. "If you need help," I said, "real help, I'm here. But the blank check is gone. That's not punishment. That's respect." She turned back to me, her eyes hard. "You don't get it. You never have." "Then help me understand." She shook her head. "You can't. Because you're stuck in this small way of thinking. You don't see the bigger picture." "The bigger picture," I repeated. "Yes, Blaze sees it. He understands ambition, growth. You just see rules and limits and—" She stopped herself, frustrated. "Forget it." She started to walk away. "Talia," I said. She stopped but didn't turn around. "I hope you figure out what you really want," I said, "before it's too late." She didn't respond. She just kept walking. I stood there watching her disappear into the crowd, my heart heavy. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Calvin. "Ready?" I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Yes." The room shifted as dinner service began. People found their seats, plates were set down, and the noise level dropped to a low hum of conversation. I stayed standing near the side wall, watching. Talia and Blay were seated at a table near the front, surrounded by people who looked important. Donors, board members, the kind of people who wrote checks with extra zeros. Blay was in his element, leaning back in his chair, gesturing with his hands, holding the table's attention like it was his job. Talia sat next to him, smiling, nodding, playing her part. I saw Nina slip into the room and take a seat near the back. She caught my eye and gave me a small nod. Witness, support, a reminder that I wasn't imagining things. My phone buzzed. Another text from Calvin. "Sloan confirmed. Everything's ready." I put the phone away and took a slow breath. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about making sure they couldn't rewrite what happened. The speeches resumed after dessert. The nonprofit director returned to the microphone, thanking everyone again, announcing donation totals, celebrating the community's generosity. Then she said, "We also want to recognize a few individuals whose support has been particularly meaningful." She began reading names. People stood. Applause rippled through the room. Then she said, "And we'd like to thank Blaze Carter and Talia Hale for their enthusiastic support and for helping us connect with new donors." Blaze stood, pulling Talia up with him. They waved. The room applauded. Blaze took the microphone. "Thank you," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Talia and I are honored to be part of this. Supporting young people, helping them reach their potential, that's what it's all about." He looked down at Talia and smiled. "And I have to say, Talia's been incredible. She's the heart of this partnership. She understands what it means to invest in people." The room applauded again. Then Blay continued, "Of course, we all have people in our lives who shaped us, who taught us lessons, not all of them intentional." He paused, his smile turning slightly sharper. "Talia's father is here tonight," Blaze said, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the room. A good man. Hardworking, old school, the kind of guy who shows up every day and does his job. A few people glanced around, trying to figure out who he was talking about. But sometimes, Blaze said, the people who love us hold us back without realizing it. They teach us to play safe, to settle, to accept limitations instead of breaking through them. I felt the room's attention shift, not fully toward me, but toward the idea of me. Talia's learned to move past that, Blaze said. To step into her power, to stop letting fear and small thinking define her. He looked at Talia again, and she smiled up at him, proud, glowing. That's what real growth looks like, Blaze finished, and I'm proud to support her in that. He handed the microphone back to the director and sat down. The room applauded. I stood there, frozen, as the weight of what he'd just said settled over me. He'd used the stage, the audience, the cover of sentiment, to paint me as the obstacle, the small thinker, the person holding Talia back. And Talia had smiled. My phone buzzed again. A notification, but not from Calvin. A payment attempt alert. Talia's card. Declined. I looked at the timestamp. 2 minutes ago. She'd tried to use the card right there, during the event. Maybe for drinks, maybe for an after-party charge she'd planned to split with Blaze, and it hadn't worked. I felt my chest tighten. This was the moment. I walked toward the front of the room, slowly, calmly. People were starting to stand, mingling again, heading toward the bar. Talia saw me coming. Her expression shifted. Confusion, then annoyance. Blaze saw me too. He stood, placing himself slightly in front of Talia. Protective, or controlling. It was hard to tell. "Gideon," he said, his voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Everything okay?" I stopped a few feet away. "We need to talk." "Now?" Blaze smiled. "This isn't really the time." "It's exactly the time," I said. Talia stepped forward. "Dad, don't." "Don't what?" I asked. "Don't do this," she said quietly. "Not here." "You did this here," I said, gesturing toward the stage. "You let him do this here, so we're finishing it here." Blay crossed his arms. "If you've got something to say it." I looked at him, then at Talia, then at the people starting to gather, sensing the shift in energy. 3 weeks ago, I said, my voice steady, I met Blaze for the first time, at a coffee shop downtown. He spent the entire conversation insulting me, my job, my life, my choices, and Talia sat there and smiled. Talia's face flushed. "Dad, I didn't argue," I continued. "I didn't make a scene, I just observed. And then I went home. And I saw the charges on the card I'd given Talia for emergencies, charges that weren't emergencies, charges that were performances." "This is ridiculous," Blaze said. 2 days later, I said, ignoring him, I went to a rooftop bar, another celebration, another stage, and Blaze did it again. Insults disguised as advice, implications that I was holding Talia back, that I was small, outdated, irrelevant. I looked at Talia. "And you let him." Her eyes were shiny now, angry or hurt, I couldn't tell. "So I set a boundary," I said. "I deactivated the card, not as punishment, as a line, because help requires respect, and respect was gone." "You cut her off out of spite," Blaze said. "I cut her off because she chose your approval over my dignity," I said, "and I will not pay to be insulted." The room was quiet now. People were listening, watching. Talia's voice cracked. "You're embarrassing me." "You embarrassed me first," I said quietly. "At the cafe, at the bar, and just now, when Blay used this stage to paint me as the problem." Blay stepped closer. "You're making yourself the problem, Gideon. You're the one making a scene." "No," I said. "I'm making it clear. You wanted an audience. You wanted a performance. So here it is." I pulled out my phone and opened the credit union app. I turned the screen toward them. This is the transaction history, I said. Non-essential purchases, lifestyle spending, time to punish me for not reacting the way you wanted. Talia's face went pale. And this, I said, pulling a folded paper from my jacket pocket, is the documentation from the credit union, authorized user limits, fraud prevention steps, legal boundaries. I handed it to her. She didn't take it. I don't want your money, she said, her voice shaking. Then you won't miss it, I said. Blay laughed, but it was forced. This is insane. You're trying to control her. I'm trying to teach her, I said. That respect isn't optional, that love isn't a blank check, and that people who care about you don't humiliate you in front of strangers. I looked at Blay. You don't love her. You're using her, and one day she'll figure that out. His smile vanished. But until then, I said, I'm done funding it. I turned to Talia. If you need real help, emergency help, health, safety, I'm here, but I will not pay for this. I gestured toward Blaze, toward the performance, toward the life she was building on someone else's terms. Talia's eyes filled with tears. You're choosing this over me. No, I said. You chose him over me. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away. Blaze followed her, but not before shooting me a look that was pure venom. I stood there, surrounded by witnesses, my heart pounding. Nina appeared at my side. You okay? No, I said. You did the right thing, she said quietly. I wasn't sure, but it was done.